While AEG may not be a household name, the brands it owns and manages certainly are. Music events like Coachella, the television network Access, not to mention a sports division that includes ownership of the LA Kings, LA Lakers, LA Galaxy, as well as various other teams and venues. In fact, AEG is the largest owner of sports teams, sports events, and sports venues in the world. Its strategy is fairly simple. Buy or create teams and venues in premier markets and make those teams or venues premier brands. It's a strategy that can be clearly seen in the LA Kings, which was bought out of bankruptcy court in 1995 and managed into a championship team by 2012. In fact, they just won their second Stanley Cup in 3 years. And Michael Ozanian sat down with Dan Beckerman, the CEO of AEG, to discuss why this victory means so much to the company in our Sports Money profile.
The Kings win it all, the second time in 3 years. What does a Stanley Cup championship mean for AEG?
The whole company started with the Kings. The Kings were the first thing before AEG was even formed. It started with the Kings in 1995. So it meant so much 2 years ago. After 45 years, to be able to bring the Stanley Cup championship to Los Angeles. And the two seasons are very different. It's a very different path that we took to the finals each of the 2 years, and great stories around it. But for AEG, it's really at the heart of our company, and it really means the world to the whole AEG family.
You were the chief financial officer for the Kings,
yes,
right before you moved up the ladder.
That's right.
To the CEO of AEG. What did you learn as the chief financial officer of the Kings?
It's great, and I came from the sports background, starting as a CFO for the Kings, and it really is a great opportunity to learn about the business and learn about what it takes to be successful on the business side. We all know what it takes and what our guys have been able to accomplish on the ice with our general manager and our coaching staff and the great success that they've had. But seeing the financial side and what it takes to be a good business, especially in a market that wasn't always a hockey market, and 20 years ago, not a traditional hockey market, although we had Wayne Gretzky, which really put LA on the map in terms of a hockey market, and to see how the sport has grown in LA and to see our fan base grow and really learn about the business and what it takes to build a successful business, having the CFO chair really gave me sort of a unique insight as to what it would take to make the business a success.
What were your first thoughts after you heard that Steve Ballmer was offering $2 billion for the Los Angeles Clippers?
Well, that's obviously a mind-blowing, record-setting valuation for a team. And a lot of people were surprised, but when you look at the LA market and you see what happened with the Dodgers and you see what happened with the Clippers, it goes back to being in the best markets. We like to have venues in the best markets. We want to have teams in the best markets in the world. And I think that there's a real premium, whether it's on the venue side or on the team side, from being in the premier market like Los Angeles. I don't think it's any coincidence that you look at the Dodger transaction and the Clipper transaction, and those two teams play maybe a mile and a half apart. They're very close. They're both kind of in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, and I think there's a real premium that comes with that.
I was thinking if I were in your shoes and I heard that, I might have done some quick math thinking, well, I own a little less than a third of the Lakers, and I know they're a much bigger brand than the Clippers, and I own a couple of MLS teams, and obviously the Kings, and sports teams throughout the world. And what I'm driving at is, do you think that deal set a new bar, not just for NBA teams, but for all sports franchises?
I think it does, again, with the caveat that depending on the market that you're in. So, I cannot tell a lie. With my CFO hat came back on a little bit, and I think about the LA Galaxy, which we think is one of the premier franchises in Major League Soccer, and the LA Kings, and the interest that we have in the LA Lakers. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was thinking a little bit about that, because we do think we have three of the premier franchises in all of sports in probably the best market in the country. We're certainly one of the top couple of markets in the country. So there was a little bit of math that I was doing. I think all teams are probably enjoying the valuation that they had, but I think New York, Los Angeles in particular, I think that was a meaningful transaction.
How much easier is it to do business, whether it be sponsorships or new deals in technology, across the AEG platform, when you have a championship team like the Kings?
There is a little bit of a glow that comes from having a team, and and our fans are so great, and they deserve it, and they really they're so passionate about it that it really helps drive a lot of our business. And you think about LA Live, where we have our entertainment campus, where we have Staples Center, you have LA Live. With LA Live, we have 20 restaurants, we have a 1,000-room hotel, we have nightclubs, we have a cinema, and that is driven by great content. And it's a multi-billion-dollar development that's really one of the anchors of our company. And when you have a championship team like the Kings, and you can start thinking about wonderful things like championship parades and fan fests, and you can have watch parties there, it drives so much value throughout LA Live and throughout AEG. And plus, it's great for all of us who've been there from the beginning with the Kings. It really brings everybody together, and it's a rallying point for the whole family.
The Anschutz Entertainment Group is owned by reclusive billionaire Philip Anschutz. Largely under his direction, Major League Soccer was founded and financed. As each year passes, soccer seems to have more of a hold over the American sports fan, making it an investment with potentially huge rewards. Here's Michael Ozanian once again with AEG CEO Dan Beckerman on the business of soccer in part 2 of our Sports Money Profile.
One thing that's always surprised me a little bit is, obviously you have an investment in the Lakers, you're the majority owner of the Kings, but a lot of your other sports teams, and I don't mean this as a slight, but they're not like, major league teams in baseball or the NFL or the sports. You own a couple of MLS teams, a hockey team in Germany, I believe, a soccer team in Sweden. I mean, it's a lot of teams that a lot of people, at least in America, wouldn't be familiar with. What's the strategy there with owning those types of teams?
We run the company as a business, and where we see a lot of opportunity oftentimes is in undervalued teams or emerging sports or sports in non-traditional markets, and that's where we see the growth and the upside. And we've focused a lot of our attention in growing soccer. So soccer has been a great investment for us. Now, it was a lot of work, it took a lot of time and a lot of money to grow it, but if you look at where soccer is today compared to where it was 20 years ago, there has been tremendous value creation. So we like to take on a task of building a sport or building a sport in a particular market that may not be the most traditional one that you might think of when you think about football or baseball or some of the other sports. But we run it as a business, and we look at it as an investment, and we like to grow something where we know that we can add value and build something.
Do you think there's a parallel to be drawn between what David Beckham did for Major League Soccer, playing for the Galaxy, to what Gretzky did for the NHL in Southern California when he came to the Kings?
Absolutely. I think, it really transformed the sport, although I think in the case of Major League Soccer, I think it really put Major League Soccer on the international map in a big way. Gretzky, when he came to the Kings, was fantastic, but they enjoyed a nice tradition and a history in the NHL coming into that. But I think for Major League Soccer, I think, we really seized that opportunity, and the entire league, I think, has become more relevant internationally and really healthy. If you look at Major League Soccer now, it's really amazing what's happening with the expansion into new markets and the growth of the league and the types of players that are coming to our league. You now have a second team coming into New York, and that's going to be a tremendous rivalry with a really strong ownership group. So to me, what's happening in soccer and what's happened in the last decade or so is really exciting, and that league has been just tremendous for AEG. It's a big part of AEG's DNA is in Major League Soccer.
AEG is involved in the building where the championship game for the World Cup is going to be played. Tremendous exposure. I'm sure it's a sellout. I think it's going to be viewed by like 600 million people throughout the World Cup. But isn't there a lot of risk attached with that, getting involved in the World Cup in Brazil as well?
Well, we have a strategy. We have a number of venues that we're going to be managing after the World Cup, and that's really what we do. And our focus is really on programming the venues for the post-World Cup era. And that's really our strategy, and we're going to be focused on operating them and driving content because they have these tremendous facilities that were built for the World Cup, and it'll be on the world stage and they'll be renowned. But then when the World Cup is over, there will be various home teams that play there, other events. We have the Olympics obviously coming to Brazil also. So, our focus is really going to be how do we operate these venues and how do we program and maximize these venues for post-World Cup.
So the World Cup is really a stepping stone into a much bigger presence in Brazil.
Yeah, our strategy, there are a number of markets where we're looking to expand, and South America is one of them. So Brazil, and we have a number of other areas where we're looking to expand. We have a huge strategy in Asia that we're launching, that we're in the middle of. But in South America, we have a real appetite for that market, and I think that the World Cup is going to be a great launch for some additional things that we're going to be doing down the road in South America.
Is AEG a company where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many different businesses that we have, from the venues and the real estate portfolio to the content and the music company to our sports teams to our ticketing company and our digital platform. We have so many different pieces that work together. We have a global partnership division which is responsible for all of our sponsorship sales and all of our premium sales throughout the entire company all over the world, hundreds of employees. And the ability to have these different assets, from a music festival to a sports team to a venue to an entertainment district to a hotel, and to have all of that inventory and all of those pieces available for that group to sell and market, for our sponsors to create that platform, is really unrivaled. And the ability to package those together really, I think, makes us unique.
All right, Michael, when you look at all the pieces of AEG, all those teams and properties, that has to be an advantage when it comes to marketing, right?
To know as a partner that your presence is going to be global and that you're going to have an advantage over your competitor is very important.
Michael, it wasn't that long ago that Philip Anschutz put AEG on the block. It's since been taken off the block. At that time, though, it was valued around $6 to $8 billion. What's it valued at now?
I have to say between 10 and 12 billion, Bob. I mean, just look at Major League Soccer. Their new television deal is 5 times more than the current deal. The value of the Clippers, I think, set a new bar for big market basketball teams. AEG owns 27% of the Lakers, so I think 10 to 12 is a good range.
All right, some incredible numbers as always.